Grand Rising, and welcome to another segment of CLG Viewpoint. It's such an honor to have you here today. I am Cindy Lorraine Grace, and today it is segment 70. Today it's Wednesday, May the 21st, 2025, and in the Kingdom of Canada, it is Divina Industria, Divine Light, day 23, year 0035. Well, today we'll be covering Climate Alarmist calls movement a scam. International news. China to launch world's first drone mothership. Local news. Canada Post effectively bankrupt. Workers issue strike notice. More than 2,000 condos sitting empty in Metro Vancouver amid housing crisis. Update, CTV National News, Faceoff over future of 400 ostriches in BC to be culled. And BC man who abandoned wife and children gets nothing from house sale. Now each segment, I like to start with the sage clearing. And for some of you that aren't familiar with the sage clearing, it's a process where we release all the negative energies from our space, leaving nothing but positive energy. So we like to start each segment in a positive atmosphere. So I grow sage. I've just planted 4 more plants last night. So to all low energy entities, you are sent back to your perfect place. Only divine love and divine light is welcomed here. And so it is. Divine love and divine gratitude. I'll start off with a video on Climate Alarmist calls movement a scam.
Was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam. Tom Harris is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He joins me now. Tom, good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way to get rid of this is to go after the science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will say, well, Canada, for example, puts out so little greenhouse gas emissions that we shouldn't actually try to reduce it because China is double the United States. Well, the trouble is people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. So they're using these arguments quite often that China's doubled the emissions of the U.S., et cetera. But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis. I was originally an aerospace engineer, and I would give speeches and I wrote articles. I wrote one in the Ottawa Citizen about comparative planetology, how studying the planets helps us understand the Earth better. And I used the example of the runaway greenhouse effect on Venus. I said, this could happen on the Earth if we don't reduce carbon dioxide. Well, a local professor at Carleton University, professor of geology, he liked my article so much he used it in his course on climate change. But he said to the students, but that part about Venus is wrong. What happened on Venus cannot physically happen on the Earth, and he explained why. Now, I thought, who is this climate change denier? Well, he invited me into his lab, and he showed me the geologic history that he and others are finding, and they found no consistent correlation between carbon dioxide and Earth's temperature. At times, CO2 was 1,300% of today, and we were stuck in very cold conditions. So it was all over the board. So I started wondering, well, maybe he's right. He exposed me to a lot of people who actually showed me that there are thousands of scientists. And here's a book actually that illustrates that. It's called Climate Change Reconsidered. And this is on climatechangereconsidered.org. There are thousands of references here which talk about the fact that there is no foundation to the climate scare. It's all based on models that don't work.
So what do you think? Is climate change a scam or another way of trying to make money? Something to research. And now on to international news. China to launch world's first drone mothership. The Shushan has been designed to deploy up to 100 AI-guided UAVs during high-altitude missions, RT News, May 19, 2025. China is preparing to launch what it says is the world's first drone carrier aircraft capable of releasing swarms of AI-guided kamikaze drones during high-altitude missions. The Shushan, or High Sky UAV, is scheduled to complete its first test mission by the end of June, according to the state broadcaster CTV. The aircraft is said to have a maximum takeoff weight of 16 tons and a wingspan of 25 meters. It can reportedly cruise at altitudes up to 15,000 meters. That's 50,000 feet, higher than most common medium-ranged air defense systems, and has a range of approximately 7,000 kilometers, which is approximately 4,350 miles. The jet-powered Shushan is reportedly capable of carrying up to 6 tons of ammunition, with the ability to release up to 100 units of loitering munitions or small drones, including kamikaze UAVs from 2 launch bays located on either side of the fuselage. After the aircraft completes a series of test missions, the People's Liberation Army, PLA, plans to deploy it as a drone mothership UAV, which will make it possible to extend the operational radius of attack drones and boost their swarming capabilities. It will also be possible to use it in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assignments, as well as electronic warfare. Outside of military applications, the drone carrier could be employed for emergency logistics, border patrol, search and rescue missions, and natural disaster response. The plane, which was unveiled at China's Zhuhai Air Show in November, has been designed by the state-owned Aerosmith Giant Aviation Industry Corporation of China and built by Xi'an Aircraft Part Manufacturing. As noted by the Economic Times, the Shushan largely mirrors the capabilities of Western UAV systems, like the MQ-9 Reaper and the RQ-4 Global Hawk, while adding swarm launch functionality, which has yet to be introduced into the U.S. arsenal. Now, I have a very, very short video on what the mothership will look like. Here we go. My personal thoughts. It's absolutely, yes, absolutely amazing. Advanced technology. China's first aerial mothership drone carrier. As stated, China's military is peace-oriented. Now on to local news. Canada Post, effectively bankrupt workers issue strike notice. Workers will take to the picket line at 12 a.m. on Friday. Ladysmith Chemainus Chronicle, written by Bowen Asman, May 19, 2025. Canada Post workers are set to strike as early as Friday, May 23rd. The company received a strike notice from the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, CUPW, for both urban and rural bargaining units on Monday, May 19th. The strike, which is expected to begin at 12 a.m. on Friday, the 23rd, is a continuation of the Christmas 2024 negotiations. The winter 2024 strike was paused when the Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered the two sides back to work 10 days before Christmas as packages piled up. Now, the Canada Industrial Relations Board order, which extended collective agreements, is set to expire on May 22nd, as an agreement has not been made. Operations are to continue as usual after the strike resumes on May 23rd, 2025, but customers should expect service delays. Socioeconomic checks for the month of May will be delivered prior to the possibility of any strike activity, and both CUPW and Canada Post have agreed to continue delivering the checks during any upcoming labor disruption. The Industrial Inquiry Commission, which was formed to review key issues in the bargaining disputes between Canada Post and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, and the company's broader financial situation, recently published a report that made recommendations for changes needed to preserve the National Post Service. IIC Commissioner William Kaplan was tasked with examining the current collective bargaining dispute between Canada Post and the union. Commissioner Kaplan and the IIC made 7 recommendations, including the end of door-to-door delivery for individual homes to preserve Canada Post as a vital national institution. However, it noted that daily delivery to businesses should be maintained. In response, the CUPW said in a statement that it fundamentally disagreed with the bulk of its recommendations and challenged some of the information on which it was based. Canada Post is a Crown corporation owned by the federal government, but is responsible for managing its own operations in accordance with the Canada Post Corporation Act. Crown corporations are created by governments for specific public policy objectives, like delivering the mail to rural areas that are not financially lucrative for businesses to operate out of it. Crown corporations do not operate with strictly commercial objectives. Quote, performance should be assessed based on the social and economic benefits they provide, not just on the money they make, said the CUPW. Since 2018, Canada Post has recorded more than $3 billion in losses and is expected to post further loss for 2025 or for 24. Personal thoughts. Canada Post is on strike. When they are bankrupt, who will take over? Who will be fiscally responsible? Maybe under natural law, a WW1, WWA Post. Something to research in the Kingdom of Canada.ca. More than 2,000 condos sitting empty in Metro Vancouver amid housing crisis. Global News, written by Amy Judd and Alyssa Thibault, May 19, 2025. A report published last month states that more than 2,000 new condos in Metro Vancouver are sitting unsold and empty. The report found that the number is predicted to rise to nearly 3,500 condos by the end of the year. Condo listings are probably the highest we've seen them in years. The realtor Adil Dinani said, 16,000 listings overall in the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board. It's the first time in 10 years. In addition, pre-sales are so low that it's forcing some developers to rethink current projects. Quote, we heard of one last week in Burnaby where the developer decided not to proceed with the project, and as a result, returned all the deposits, Dinan said. Brian Yu, chief economist with credit union Central One, told Global News that despite the availability, buyers still seem to be hesitant to purchase homes. I think it's just a reflection of a couple of factors, he said. Low affordability and a lot of the uncertainty around the economy and those trade stocks right now. Prime Minister Mark Carney promised during his election campaign to double housing starts, which would eventually drive prices down. Once we increase as a country the rate of home building, then that is going to make home prices much lower than they otherwise would be, Carney said during a media availability in Rome on Sunday. Last week, former Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson was sworn in as housing minister in Carney's new cabinet. When asked if he thought home prices needed to go down, he told reporters, no, I think that we need to deliver more supply, make sure the market is stable. Robertson said his work as housing minister is focused on building up the supply of affordable housing in Canada. We need to be delivering more affordable housing. The government of Canada has not been building affordable housing since the 1990s, and we've created a huge shortage across Canada, he said. Now on to the video.
Is in dire shape.
I would say it's probably dead at this point in terms of the activity.
A report last month finding more than 2,000 new completed condos are sitting unsold, predicted to rise to nearly 3,500 by year's end. That's in addition to regular listings.
Condo listings are probably the highest we've seen them in years. 16,000 listings overall in the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board. It's the first time in 10 years.
And pre-sales are so low it's forcing some to rethink current projects.
We heard of one last week in Burnaby where the developer decided not to proceed with the project, and he, as a result, returned all the deposits.
But even though it is a buyer's market, buyers are still hesitant.
I think just a reflection of a couple of factors, just low affordability and a lot of the uncertainty in the market around the economy and those trade shocks right now.
Sunday morning, the Prime Minister was asked if lowering prices was a way to improve affordability. Mark Carney saying his election promise to double housing starts would eventually drive prices down.
Once we increase as a country the rate of home building, then that is going to make home prices much lower than they otherwise would be. But that's a medium-term effect.
It comes after the country's new housing minister and former Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson confirmed lowering prices would not be part of his policies.
We don't need to upset the apple cart with people's homes and assets and mortgages. I think we got to be careful to protect everyone who's got a home right now, make sure that that's stable, but also we got to build a lot more.
According to experts, there is a silver lining.
We haven't seen market conditions this attractive in years. I would likely say pre-pandemic.
Buyers who are able to get into the market have strong negotiating power. Alyssa Thibault, Global News.
My personal thoughts. If the prices of condos go down further, then won't that stimulate the market for purchasing? More Canadians will be able to afford a home. Under the Kingdom of Canada.ca, check out the decree on housing prices going down to 1955 prices. Something to research and to think about. And one last thing. Couldn't those condos be transformed into rentals? At least to help out the people of Canada who are living on the streets or out of a home? CTV National News Faceoff over future 400 ostriches in BC, May 20th, 2025. A BC farm is going head to head with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency over an ordered cull, which means kill, of 400 ostriches. Andrew Johnson has the details, and here is the video.
From across the country, trying to save its flock of 400 ostriches.
Our hearts are full, and it just helps, obviously, all those hugs and encouraging words from kind people of people across Canada that have come here.
The CFIA ordered the birds destroyed in December after the discovery of avian flu, a grim process that's played out at farms across Canada to try to stop the spread to other farms, animals, and humans. More than 14 million birds have been killed. The ostrich farm fought the order in court, stalling it for months. Now the owners say the surviving birds are healthy.
This doesn't make sense. Let's retest these animals. Let's look at us like a recovered flock.
Last week, a judge sided with the CFIA, greenlighting the call the federal agency says will go ahead, a decision that has angered activists and even has the premier expressing frustration.
What's hard to watch is a lack of discretion and ability to evaluate case-by-case scenarios.
In a statement, the federal agency says, allowing a domestic poultry flock known to be exposed to avian influenza to remain alive allows a potential source of the virus to persist. It would increase the possibility of reassortment or mutation. An infectious disease expert calls this an ethical dilemma, but believes a cull should still go ahead.
It's very dangerous to set a precedent to say we're just going to refuse to comply with this CFIA order. I have a tremendous amount of empathy in this case because it feels, inherently unfair and arguably even unethical to have to put down these animals that for all intents and purposes seem healthy. The problem is if everybody does that, though, it creates a huge amount of increased risk.
The CFIA is not sharing when exactly the call will go ahead. Protesters at the farm trying to save the birds are promising to stick around. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
My personal thoughts. This whole issue on killing 400 ostriches who are reportedly healthy is a travesty. This annihilation needs to stop. And the political officials needs to stop this culling, this killing. These 400 ostriches may be the answer to the avian flu outbreaks. As they have now herd immunity, research can be done on the success of these ostriches living through a small avian flu outbreak. And the avian flu may be contained to prevent any future killings of other livestock across Canada and around the world. The key is research. Do you think that the ostriches should be saved? BC man abandoned wife and children gets nothing from house sale. Ladysmith Chronicle. Written by Brendan Phillips, May 20th, 2025. Vern Zoller left the family home to move in with his new partner while his family were out of the country. A Penticton man who abandoned his wife and children for his bookkeeper was entitled to nothing after the family home was forced to be sold to cover his debts. In a recently published Supreme Court decision, Justice Gary Weatherill found that Bernd Zoller was entitled to none of the net proceeds of the sale of the house he once shared with his wife, Alexandra Zoller. According to the April 25th judgment, the two had been married for more than 2 decades. Yes, 2 decades, before Byrne abruptly left the house to move in with his bookkeeper, while Alexandra and their 3 children were on a trip to Germany in 2013. A year later, Byrne declared bankruptcy due to debts accumulated by his failed auto mechanic business. The house Alexandra resided in was sold in 2024 to pay off a number of debts that were accumulated when the Zollers were living together, which left $338,000 in a trust pending the court's decision on how it should be split. The question of whether an equal split should be significantly unfair, the judgment reads, was simply yes. Justice Weatherill noted that Alexandra had been solely responsible for paying down the family debt, mortgage on the home, utilities, insurance, and property taxes. I concluded it would be manifestly unjust and significantly unfair in these circumstances not to order an unequal division, Justice Weatherill wrote. In deciding how much of the proceeds should go to Alexandra, the justice broke down how much Byrne would have paid in debts, which would have left just more than $33,500 as his share, without considering any potential child support that was never paid. Byrne tried to argue that his bankruptcy had been cleared $263,000 of the family debt, which he should get credit for when considering the distribution of proceeds. Justice Wetherell rejected that argument for having no precedence or merit. Given his position that he was unable to work, I suspect none of his creditors received anything, Wetherell wrote. As an analogy, his argument is akin to a situation where a family debt lapses due to an intervening limitation period, and the party owing the debt asserts that he or she gets credit for paying it. The justice noticed that Byrne had also inherited his new partner's home after she died in 2019, while Alexandra had been forced to sell her home. On balance, and taking everything into account, I cannot come to any other conclusion but to find that the respondent be entitled to 100% of the net proceeds, to the exclusion of the claimant. Wetherell wrote, in my view, and keeping an eye on the parties' different levels of net worth, it would be manifestly unfair for the claimant to benefit from the family home's appreciation, given that he abandoned both the property and the family. The justice also awarded Alexandra her legal costs. My personal thoughts. Do you think that it was a fair process for Alexandra and her children? Do you think that this court hearing was held under natural law? Again, check into the website, thekingdomofcanada.ca, for further research on natural law. I am Cindy Lorraine Grace, and it has been such an honor for you being here with me today. If you feel compelled to, please share this forum with others, and thank you. The end of the video I created, wrote, and published Beautiful BC #2, and its quotes. Have a truly wonderful day. See you on Divina Industria, Divine Life, Day 24, year 0035, Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. And see you next time. And here is the video, and enjoy. Beautiful, beautiful BC.